This episode of the CyberWire is made possible in part by SpyCloud. Stolen data circulating on the criminal underground is fuel for data breaches, account takeover, ransomware attacks, and online fraud. Your biggest security risk might be a breach or malware infection outside of your control that leaks the data of your users. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, powering solutions that proactively protect over 2 billion employees and consumers worldwide. Learn how to make recaptured data your best defense at spycloud.com/cyberwire. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. A criminal talent broker emerges, developing threats to financial institutions, phishing through PayPal, lessons to be learned from LAPSUS post-flameout, more spear phishing of Ukrainian targets, U.S. Cyber Command releases IOCs obtained from Ukrainian networks, Johannes Ulrich from SANS on the value of keeping technology simple. Our guests are Carla Plummer and Akila Tunsil from the organization Black Girls in Cyber. And not really honor, but honor's self-interested first cousin. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Thursday, July 21st, 2022. Cyberint reports the emergence of a new criminal threat group, the Atlas Intelligence Group, also known as the Atlantis Cyber Army. Atlas is unusual in its business model, recruitment of cyber mercenaries to do specific jobs for campaigns known only to the administrators. The group has been operating and growing since May of this year, advertising in Telegram markets and its own dedicated Telegram accounts. Their customers access their services in an e-commerce store hosted on the Celix platform. A guy who goes by the hacker name Mr. Eagle and presents himself as the group's leader lists Atlas Intelligence Group's services, exclusive data leaks, distributed denial of service, campaigns for hire, RDP attacks, and initial access. The group suggests in its advertising that it has connections with corrupt law enforcement personnel in Europe, but such claims, of course, are difficult to verify. Cyberint says most of their databases for sale are government-related, while access to RDP clients and web shells that are being sold mostly belong to organizations from the finance, education, and manufacturing industries. The permanent staff includes Mr. Eagle and perhaps 4 admins. They're engaged fundamentally in outsourcing, acting as recruiters and brokers for the talent that actually delivers the illicit services, rogue pen testers, social engineering specialists, and malware developers. They keep their crews compartmentalized. The actual workers know only about the specific capers they've been hired to pull off. Cyberint gives the gang credit for maturity and sophistication. While this may be true in operational terms, as far as self-presentation goes, the diction is the crude, strutting, subliterate stuff one expects from the underworld. The Atlas Intelligence Group has been seen to target countries around the world, including the U.S., Pakistan, Israel, Colombia, and the United Arab Emirates. Cyberint doesn't say who buys from Atlas. Calling them mercenaries suggests that their clientele may be states, but then criminal gangs bring in hired guns as well. And one final note on naming. Atlas Intelligence Group is referred to in some reports as A.I.G. They are not to be confused with the large and legitimate insurance and financial service company American International Group, the real A.I.G. Proofpoint today released a study of the TA4563 threat group and the EvilNum malware it's deployed against financial institutions, mostly in Europe. The group is particularly interested in financial institutions that deal with foreign exchange, cryptocurrency, and decentralized finance. EvilNum itself is a backdoor that, once in place, can be used either for data theft or for staging further malware. Proofpoint concludes, EvilNum malware and the TA4563 group pose a risk to financial organizations. Based on Proofpoint analysis, their malware is under active development, although Proofpoint did not observe follow-on payloads deployed in identified campaigns. Third-party reporting indicates EvilNum malware may be leveraged to distribute additional malware, including tools available via the Golden Chickens malware as a service. TA4563 has adjusted their attempts to compromise the victims using various methods of delivery. Whilst Proofpoint observed this activity and provided detection updates to thwart this activity, it should be noted that a persistent adversary will continue to adjust their posture in their compromise attempts. Avanan this morning reported that criminals have been seen using a PayPal account to distribute phishing emails. Avanan says, starting in June 2022, our researchers have seen hackers use PayPal to send malicious invoices and request payments. The hackers send the email from PayPal's domain using a free PayPal account that they have signed up for, with the email body spoofing brands like Norton. The approach is similar to one seen earlier this summer, in which criminals used QuickBooks to send phishing emails. The tactic is attractive because most allow lists view QuickBooks domains as legitimate and pass the email right through. Avanan researchers call the practice of attackers using websites that appear on static allow lists to get in the victim's inbox the static expressway. This same tactic is being used again with PayPal, where criminals have sent out fake invoices that rely on the legitimacy of PayPal to reach inboxes. Reportedly, the attack works because of what is known on the dark web as a double spear. They induce the victim to call a number and pay the invoice, which gives the attackers not only your email but your phone number, and all too often your money as well. The LAPSUS group, which blazed like a skyrocket last year with its gaudy, wild, and opportunistic data theft and doxing extortion scams, has now effectively fizzled out. Some of its script kiddie leaders have received police attention, and the group no longer seems to be a player in the underworld. Tenable has published a look at the LAPSUS record with a view to seeing what can be learned from the group's career. LAPSUS was motivated equally, it seems, by cash and cachet. Specifically, 3 characteristics can be discerned in the group's history: lower maturity tactics and behaviors, priority for clout and notoriety, and a primary focus on monetary goals. The group's career followed the sort of arc one might expect. It began with DDoS and website vandalism, then moved up to data theft. Tenable sums the group's life like this: characterized by erratic behavior and outlandish demands that cannot be met. At one point, the group even accused a target of hacking back. The LAPSUS group's tenure at the forefront of the cybersecurity news cycle was chaotic. It's hard to say how much money the LAPSUS group has earned from its enterprise, but it cannot be denied that the group gained notoriety for better or worse. 3 months since the peak of LAPSUS attacks and arrests, the group remains largely inactive. And we hope the script kiddies have been scared straight, no more to break their mothers' hearts. Late yesterday, Mandiant released a report on spear phishing campaigns in progress against Ukrainian targets. 2 groups, one Russian, the other Belarusian, have been recently active. The Russian-aligned actor UNC 2589 uses evacuation-themed emails as its phishbait, as well as notes about wages and compensation. Mandiant notes uncertainty about UNC 2589's provenance, let alone its exact place in Moscow's organization charts. The Belarusian group, UNC 1151, believed to provide technical support for Ghostwriter, uses a proffer of advice on how to shelter while under artillery fire as its fishbait. So the lures in this case trade more on fear than anything else. Evacuation and shelter in place under shell fire are very high in Ukrainian minds. Staying with some news related to Russia's war against Ukraine, U.S. Cyber Command's National Cyber Mission Force has released a large set of indicators of compromise, 20 in all, obtained from Ukrainian networks. The IOCs are interesting and useful in themselves, but the release also indicates how closely U.S. Cyber Command is working with its counterparts in the security service of Ukraine. The announcement from Fort Meade reads, in part, "Our Ukrainian partners are actively sharing malicious activity they find with us to bolster collective cybersecurity, just as we are sharing with them. We continue to have a strong partnership in cybersecurity between our two nations. HP Wolf Security released a report today detailing the evolution of cybercrime. The story it tells is one of commodification and one of the maturation of the C2C markets in general. Stolen credentials can be had, the researchers say in the screamer that opens their press release, for the price of a gallon of gas. The security firm's threat team worked together with Forensic Pathways to investigate the dark web for 3 months and analyzed over 35 million criminal marketplaces and forum posts. It was found that malware is cheap and accessible, as over 3/4 of malware advertised and 91% of exploits are priced at under $10, with average remote desktop protocol credentials going for $5. Vendors have been found to sell products in bundles, such as plug-and-play malware kits, tutorials, mentoring services, and the like, which reduce the barrier to entry for inexperienced coders and hackers. The researchers also found that there is a utilitarian sense of honor among cybercriminals, noting that trust and reputation are valued in the cybercriminal underworld. 77% of observed marketplaces require a vendor bond, 85% use escrow payments, and 92% have a third-party dispute resolution service. Cybercrime has also increasingly taken place on popular software, with threat actors using gaps and vulnerabilities in software such as the Windows OS, Microsoft Office, content management systems, and web and mail servers. So egoism and altruism can have indistinguishable results, for which the authors of the Federalist Papers wouldn't have been surprised. And now, a word from our sponsor, ExtraHop. With millions of dollars to earn, today's cyber attackers have grown advanced. Whether they're hiding malicious activity in encrypted channels, laying low under the guise of a trusted third party, or taking advantage of the latest CVE, they know they'll have the upper hand. In a world where attackers have the advantage, ExtraHop is on a mission to help you take it back. Learn more about how ExtraHop helps you defend your enterprise against advanced threats like supply chain compromises, ransomware, and APTs. Visit extrahop.com/cyberwire. That's extrahop.com/cyberwire. And we thank ExtraHop for sponsoring our show. The nonprofit organization Black Girls in Cyber was founded in 2020 with the goal of increasing industry awareness and diversity in cybersecurity, privacy, and STEM for women of color. Joining us today to share more about their mission are Carla Plummer and Akila Tunsil. Carla Plummer is an information security engineer at Intel, and Akila Tunsil is a security delivery analyst at Accenture Federal Services. Our conversation starts with Carla Plummer.
I think one of the biggest challenges, from you look at the genesis of everything, is even knowing that it is a possibility, right? And so past that challenge of when you look at a lot of colleges and departments of engineering, there's not very many women to begin with, and then there's not very many women of color from that perspective. So that is one of the major challenges. Second major challenge is being able to translate some of your skills that may not necessarily be cyber IT specific. How do you go about translating the skills that you do have that can be an asset to the industry, to a hiring manager or team to show that you can provide value, and so that's one of the bigger challenges there.
Akila, I'm particularly interested in what Carla says about that awareness issue. I mean, can you sort of give us some insights when you're out there spreading the word about this? So what's the reaction like for the young women that you're speaking to, or the folks who are looking to change their career path? Is it a bit eye-opening for them that these options are out there?
Yes, absolutely. I think so. There's thought that, cybersecurity or anything technology is sort of just out of your reach because you have that notion that this is too difficult to even understand, or, you have to have, a ton of experience and a ton of knowledge that you just never heard of. So, learning a new language and trying to, I guess, connect that to real life situations, like how can I have a career in this? I think that's the kind of consensus because we're just not exposed to it. So, I mean, you only understand what you know and what you've been exposed to, right? So I think that the stigma behind encouraging young women, especially young women of color, and in general, I don't think that technology is just becoming, I guess, mainstream in the sense that we think about traditional careers, paths, and so forth. Like people from my generation, like, I'm from the 80s, I was born in the 80s. So, we only thought about being a teacher, a doctor, lawyer, or something like that, right? You weren't really thinking about technology as a career path. Like, what do you do in that, And because it's so vague, I think that there's lots of different ways to interpret what is cyber, like what kind of career is that, there's just so many different things you can do in the field that it kind of makes it hard to grasp what can I do in this field.
I think one of the challenges, sorry, not to cut you off, but just to piggyback on something that Akila said, is a lot of people believe that every role within cyber is uber technical, right? Everyone, even now, I try to explain to my mom or my family what I do, and they're like, oh, you're a hacker. No, that's not what I do exactly. And so, what society portrays versus what the message we're trying to spread, sometimes it is contradictory because, like Akila said, you only know what you know. And if you're getting most of your information from the mainstream media and not diving yourself into the industry, really, that you don't really get to understand that, yeah, there are a lot of technical roles, sure, but there are also so many non-technical roles that play a part in developing a cyber strategy as a whole.
And what exactly does your outreach look like? How are you out there spreading the word about this?
So we do we're on every social media platform. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and that comes through most of our marketing campaign. Our events team holds, I can't even count how many number of events. They do lots of day in the life series so that to give people an understanding and a little insight into different careers and things like that. Those events are generally open to the public, free to join the Zoom webinar to ask questions and things of that nature. So that is mostly how we spread. From there, we have our fellowship, which Akila and I serve as the co-directors over the cybersecurity curriculum. We offer volunteer, other people, even if you're not a cybersecurity professional, but want to volunteer to help us out and learn from that perspective. Those opportunities are out there and available. Don't get stuck on the title of a position and things like that. Just continue to move forward. And feel free to reach out to us. I mean, we have lots of free resources that we can steer you toward to help you, in your journey.
That's Carla Plummer and Akila Tunsil from Black Girls in Cyber. And now, a word from our sponsor, Barracuda. Right now, everyone is talking about cryptocurrency. and the cybercriminals are hiding in the conversation. Cybercriminals use social engineering loaded with urgency and fear to successfully prey on your company, your employees, and your customers. Spear phishing is just one of 13 types of email threats. Barracuda has identified these 13 types and shows you how you can protect your company, your customers, and your reputation. Find out about the 13 email threat types and Barracuda email protection. Get your free ebook at barracuda.com/cyberwire. And we thank Barracuda for sponsoring our show. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Johannes Ulrich. He is the Dean of Research at the SANS Technology Institute and also the host of the ISC Stormcast podcast. Johannes, it's always great to welcome you back. You know, you and I, we both spend a little bit of time over on Twitter, and something that I see happen a lot is that some innocent user will post something about how they did this, that, or the other. They used a QR code or something like that, and in come all of the information security professionals rolling their eyes and saying, oh, don't ever do that, don't ever do that. And then typically there's some back and forth that, not everyone's security situation is the same. Is there something to be said here for just sort of keeping things simple?
Yeah, keeping things simple, also keep the user in mind and keep in mind what you're protecting. Kind of keep security reasonable with respect to what you're protecting. I always tell this story from the guard in the dog park I used to go to. And 70-something years old, makes $12 an hour. And the apartment complex he lives in, well, he used to pay by check, as you're doing here in the US, his rent every month, until the management company decided he has to do a bank transfer now, which he hasn't really done before. So his solution to the problem was to give the manager the username and password for his online banking account so they can set it up for him. Worked okay in this case. You say, okay, it's terribly insecure. It is. I don't recommend you do that. But actually, in this case, it was in some ways better than getting evicted. So,
right.
And I always see QR codes a little bit somewhere. What's a threat you're protecting the user from? A QR code is a very simple way to get users to visit the correct website. It works with mobile devices, which now is, for the most part, default computing device for a lot of people. The same devices have impossible to use keyboards for the most part. And the threat here that's often described is, hey, but you don't know where you are ending up. So someone could redirecting you to a malware site, to a phishing site, or whatnot else. Well, what's the alternative? A shortcode doesn't really provide any kind of protection here as far as being redirected to a bad site, or even worse, let the user type a real long, weird URL on a mobile keyboard. They're probably going to put a typo in there, and then you have typo squatting domains. So in many ways, by not using QR code, you may actually hurt the business purpose here, but you're not really adding a lot of security. I think there are a lot of things like this where some of the sort of security establishment mafia kind of, is going overboard and trying to do things, trying to secure things that really, in the end, you have to remember that the goal of security is to stay in business.
Well, also, I think it comes up pretty regularly, practically a cliche, where you'll see some elderly person has a notebook full of all of their passwords, and they get criticized for that. But I mean, it seems like a perfectly reasonable use case for me. Chances are there aren't bands of people trying to break into that person's apartment on the lookout for password books, right?
Another example that I always use, like I have C-Wave door lock. And people always say, hey, that's terribly insecure. I tell people, please, if you're breaking into my house, please hack my door lock, because I'm living in an old historic house and the top half of the door is actually an old window glass pane. If you smash that with a brick and I need to replace it, it's a lot more money than breaking or hacking the door lock. So again, I don't see a lot of burglars walking around with Bluetooth hacking kits. Usually I see them walking around with a brick and not with...
Right, wearing a mask and a black and white striped shirt. Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the take-homes for me is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right?
Yes, that's very important with security, and I see this getting so often away where someone says, hey, there's a vulnerability in the security feature X, it can be bypassed. Does it take more work to bypass than it takes to implement a security feature?
Yeah. All right, well, Johannes Ulrich, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible, especially our supporting sponsor, Keeper Security. Protect every user and system in your organization with zero trust and zero knowledge security. Visit keepersecurity.com/cyberwire to learn more. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Liz Irvin, Elliot Peltzman, Trey Hester, Brandon Karp, Eliana White, Haru Prakash, Justin Sabi, Rachel Gelfand, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Ivan, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Hello, CyberWire listeners. Want to hear your ad on our daily podcast? Broaden the reach of your sales and marketing efforts and build partnerships with valuable leads by becoming a CyberWire sponsor. As the largest B2B podcast network with readers and listeners from all over the world, we are the top source for some of the most influential security leaders in the industry. Reach your target audience and beyond by taking advantage of the sponsorship opportunities here at the CyberWire. We can tailor the perfect campaign for your business at any scale. Contact us to find out how. Visit thecyberwire.com/sponsor for more information. That's thecyberwire.com/sponsor. Spots are limited, so act fast.